Hey, welcome. Today we are getting right into the story of high blood pressure. And I promise you, it's not just about the numbers you see on a machine. No, it's a physical drama that's playing out inside your arteries right now. And like any good story, this one has a twist. Take a look at this number, 7.5 million. According to the World Health Organization, that's how many deaths in a single year are tied to high blood pressure. That makes it the single biggest risk factor for death on the entire planet. So a number that big brings up a really important question, right? If this thing is so deadly and so common, why don't people feel it? Why isn't your body sounding all sorts of alarms? Well, the answer to that question is exactly what makes it so incredibly dangerous. You see, for the huge majority of people, we're talking about 95% of cases, there are literally no warning signs. No pain, no weird feelings, nothing. And those symptoms you might think of, like headaches or feeling dizzy, those usually only show up when your blood pressure has hit crisis levels, sometimes over 200 systolic. By that point, the damage has already been happening for a while. Okay, so to really get what's going on with this silent process, we have to look at our arteries. And I want you to think about it like this. Are your arteries like flexible garden hoses, or are they starting to act more like rigid, unbending pipes? And that question brings us to this key idea called arterial stiffness. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a loss of flexibility. See, your arteries are supposed to be bouncy and elastic. They're designed to expand every time your heart beats and then snap right back. Arterial stiffness is what happens when they lose that springiness. And you can really see the difference here. On the left, you've got healthy arteries. They're like those flexible hoses. Their elastic walls absorb the pressure from a heartbeat, which keeps the blood flowing nice and smooth. But look at the right. Stiff arteries are like hard pipes. They have no give. So that same heartbeat sends a jarring pressure spike, almost like a water hammer effect, shooting through your whole body. Now here's the twist. This isn't a one-and-done kind of thing. That pressure spike doesn't just go away. It actually kicks off a destructive feedback loop. This is what we mean by the vicious cycle at the very heart of high blood pressure. So let's walk through how this works. Step 1 is mechanical stress. That constant, high pressure is literally beating up the inner walls of your arteries. So what happens? The walls try to protect themselves by remodeling. They start producing more tough, rigid stuff like collagen, and they break down the good, flexible stuff, elastin. That leads straight to step 3. The arteries become stiff. And finally, because those arteries are now rigid pipes, they can't absorb the next heartbeat's pressure, which makes the pressure spike even higher. And that higher pressure causes more damage, kicking the whole cycle off again. And if that wasn't bad enough, our body's own chemistry can jump in and make things worse. Hormone systems, like one called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, or RAAS for short, can get overactive. This makes blood vessels tighten up even more, which basically just pours gasoline on the fire and speeds up the whole damaging cycle. So you might be wondering, why does this internal fight inside our arteries matter so much? Because, unfortunately, it doesn't stay there. The fallout from this vicious cycle ripples outward, and it starts to take aim at some of our most important organs. Think about your heart. It has to pump way harder to force blood through those stiff pipes, and over time, its main chamber gets thicker and weaker. And in your brain, those relentless pressure waves can damage the delicate barrier that protects it, which is a huge risk factor for stroke. Your kidneys? They're basically just these super dense filters full of tiny blood vessels, and they get absolutely hammered by the constant pressure, which can lead to kidney failure. It can even damage the tiny, tiny vessels in the back of your eyes. And if you need a number to really put this into perspective, look at this. Let this one sink in for a second. Just a 2-point rise in that top blood pressure number is linked to a 7% higher risk of death from heart disease and a 10% higher risk from stroke. It's a pretty powerful reminder that every single point really does matter. Okay, so with this destructive cycle and these serious consequences, the big question is obvious. How do you stop it? How do we manage the pressure and break the cycle? Well, there are a few different approaches and frankly, some pretty interesting debates. So mainstream medicine points to a few main strategies. First up, you have lifestyle changes, things like diet and exercise. Then there are medications, and a lot of them are designed specifically to block that RAAS hormone system we just talked about. And interestingly, statins, which we usually think of for cholesterol, have also been shown to help make arteries less stiff. But this is where things start to get a little more complicated. Because while pretty much everyone agrees on the big ideas, When you drill down into the details of something like diet, you find some major disagreements. And the biggest one is all about salt. This slide really lays out the two sides of the coin. On one side, you have the American Heart Association, and their guideline is to keep sodium really low, down at 1.5 grams a day. But then you have this massive global study, over 100,000 people, that found something completely different. It found that the lowest rates of death and heart problems were actually in people who ate between 4 and 6 grams a day. Now, we're not picking a side here, we're just showing you what the different sources say.
And the conversation doesn't end with salt. Other perspectives bring up different factors. For instance, the role of stress, both emotional and physical, which can actually make your red blood cells sticky and cause them to clump up. Then there's the focus on structural health. One 2007 study that's often cited found that a specific chiropractic adjustment to the upper neck was able to significantly lower blood pressure, which suggests there could be a link between our spine and how our body regulates blood pressure.
So you see, in the end, your blood pressure is so much more than just a couple of numbers. It's a story. It's a story about what's happening deep inside your arteries and whether they're caught in that vicious cycle of damage and stiffness. It's a vital sign, for sure, but the real question is, do you know the story that it's telling about you?